Feels like it's going to take something special, doesn't it, to close the gap between the bottom four in League One and the sides directly above them. Because at the moment, the highest placed team inside the relegation zone is Burton Albion, and the lowest placed team outside the relegation zone is Peterborough United. Peterborough are 6 points above Burton with a game in hand. And beyond Peterborough, you're looking at Northampton Town, who already have a very healthy 41 points under their belt. Just another 9 to tick off, if you like, in their remaining 10 games, if they need as many as 9 points. Because at the moment, there's been times when certainly 3 of the bottom 4 have shown signs of resurgence. You look at Shrewsbury when Gareth Ainsworth first took charge, there was an instant or a reasonably quick upturn in form. Similar with Burton Albion under Gary Bowyer, they found some encouraging upturns, an encouraging sort of turnaround in fortunes after a really difficult start under Mark Robinson. But even with that improvement from the Brewers, they're still 6 points adrift of safety, which shows how far off they were at the start of the season. Cambridge United struggling massively under Gary Monk. When Neil Harris and Mark Bonner were appointed head coach and director of football respectively, they did show some signs of resurgence, but since then it's after back-to-back wins starting after those appointments, they've lost their last 3 games. So there is a little bit of a gap emerging with Peterborough United responding so well to that 5-1 loss at Lincoln City, where boss Darren Ferguson questioned the mentality of his players. There's been signs of solidity from Northampton Town under Kevin Nolan. Mansfield Town, who are the ones plummeting, and possibly even the likeliest to drop into the bottom 4 at this stage out of the possible candidates based on their form. Well, they already amassed a huge number of points earlier in the campaign. Bristol Rovers back-to-back wins, Exeter City back-to-back wins. You can see a bit of a chasm emerging. So it's going to take something quite special from Shrewsbury, Cambridge, Crawley or Burton to make something of their seasons and try and give themselves a shot at staying up. Are they up to it? And will there be anyone who can plummet from the 5 teams above the drop zone? That's what we're going to be discussing on this League One podcast. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. If you enjoy these episodes, you could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would help us out an awful lot. Delighted to be joined now by my co-host, James McClare, who we're hoping not to be too familiar with League One next season. Like me, a Birmingham City fan, we're 14 points clear at the top of the league. So, but you've been studying the league, I guess, from a Birmingham City, from blue tinted glasses, James. So just wondering what you've made of the teams in that bottom 9.
Pleasure for having me on, Gab. Really appreciate it. And yeah, have been keeping an eye from sitting pretty at the top of the league. So it's easy to look down than when you're in it, as we know from the last few seasons, being at the bottom end of the championship. But at one point, I felt like a few of the teams above the drop zone were absolutely destined to drop into it. But the upturns, as you mentioned, Kevin Nolan, Inigo Calderon, particularly for Bristol Rovers and Northampton, their improvements have been quite something under those managers. Peterborough, you always felt like they had enough quality to turn it around, and they're kind of showing what they're all about lately. And then just you feel like the games have kind of caught up with the sides that were showing resurgence in the bottom 4, as you mentioned. So the picture changes every now and then, but it's going to, like you said, it's going to take something special for the 4 that are in it, or any of the 4 that are in it, to mount a charge out of the bottom 4.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, that'd be a bit of a relief for, it would be a relief for our first guest. We were joined by Chaz, but I think he was there and then he's dropped out. So we'll hopefully be rejoined by him in just a moment's time. Who do you think, James, of the current bottom 4? So this is Burton Albion, Crawley Town, Cambridge United, and Shrewsbury Town, stand the best chance of putting, stringing some form together in the last 10 games. I mean, in terms of the points difference, Burton Albion are 6 points off safety, whereas Crawley, Cambridge, and Shrewsbury are all at a much bigger gap, and that could make life really difficult for them. But what have you made of those sort of four sides?
I think Burton obviously have had some really encouraging form, and when they had Burrell and Bodvarsson both firing, you thought that maybe that would be the thing that made the difference for them. You can't really buy goals when it comes to relegation battles, but now you're looking at it, they've got the toughest points per game of their opponents remaining out of those four sides, and Bodvarsson and Burrell have both had a little bit of difficulties with fitness and performance for Burrell over the last few games. And then Shrewsbury and Crawley and Cambridge all just feel a little bit too far away at the moment. I'm not convinced there's enough in the Cambridge and Shrewsbury squads as well in terms of quality, and the Crawley bunch just feel as though whilst they do have enough possession and that kind of approach to be able to take games by the scruff of the neck a little bit more, or being more comfortable trying to look to win games rather than make them tight and difficult, that maybe they're just a little bit inexperienced and a bit of a weird blend of players, too much to be a side that can piece together a real strong run of form over the last 10. So I'd still say Burton are probably the side in the best position, both points-wise and in terms of what they're showing on the pitch. But yeah, not too convinced by all of the sides in the bottom four at the moment, or their chances of getting out.
Well, that'd be a relief for Charlie McClellan, our Peterborough United fan who joins us now. Charlie, thanks so much for joining us. I was so worried about Peterborough after that 5-1 loss at Lincoln, not only the performance and result, but also the comments that we heard from Darren Ferguson saying that this was the softest group that he had ever worked with in his 20-year managerial career. Are you surprised at how defiantly this group of players have responded, given that you've only lost once since then?
I mean, yes and no. It's a tough one. First of all, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. And yes and no. I always felt that we were much better than our league standing and our results. No matter how low it got this season, even after Lincoln, it felt like our squad was a lot higher than where we fell to, which was like 20th in League One, which I think is where we still sit now. So I'm not surprised that we've been able to put a run of results together, but I think it's the way we've done it. I felt like if we could return to scoring lots of goals, then that would be sort of our way back into it, with the attacking talent we have of Ricky J. Jones, Malik Mothersill, Poku now returning, even players like Abraham Odo, Kean Hayes, they're talented footballers. So I felt like they'd be our way back into it. But actually, it's been sort of, we've got a lot more defensively solid. Obviously, bringing in Sam Hughes, Teo Adun has really, really boosted us at the back. Mm-hmm. And so we've sort of, I'm surprised that it's been the defence that has sort of got us out of the hole and not our attacking players.
Interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. I remember feeling a bit. I watched the extended highlights of the Lincoln game, and I felt a bit for Sam Hughes because I felt like he was holding his end of the bargain, and he was being very aggressive at times, and doing all the right things. But then he just had this kind of gaping hole in front of him. And I guess I imagine you would say that you've kind of found solutions to that now.
Yeah, I think he's got quite a good partnership with Oscar Wallin. I think that Wallin sort of makes up for what Sam Hughes lacks, and Sam Hughes does the same for him. Sam Hughes' skills are aerially, and he reads the game super well, but he's not the most speedy. He's not great in terms of recoveries, but that's Wallin's big strength. So they complement each other quite well. And yeah, I mean, Sam Hughes has been probably... him and Adun have been super important for us. That I do think there was a chance we would have gone down, genuine chance we would have gone down without their additions, because they have been like massive for us. And his experience, Sam Hughes, I mean, he only joined in January, but apparently after that Lincoln game that you mentioned, he absolutely tore into the players in the dressing room. He'd only been there for like 2 games at that point, but he delivered some real home truths, and he was actually named captain for a while Hector Cipriano was sort of in and out of the team. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely made a massive impact, and I'm a big fan of his. And to be honest, I'm very surprised that I don't think Stockport's defenders are that good, where he shouldn't have been getting a sniff for them. So I don't know what's gone on there, but I think Stockport probably at this point would be considering taking him back for sure.
Yeah, sometimes players need that opportunity, don't they? James, what have you made of Peterborough from an outside perspective? Obviously, from now, have they played Birmingham twice, or just completely
Just the
forgotten that?
once, just the
Just the
once at the
once, yeah.
moment. But it'll be two. The second of 3 times will be in the league, and then the third will be in that all-important Vertu Trophy final. 2 in a week as well, which I'm sure is a bit of an anticlimax for both sets of supporters. But no, really impressed by Peterborough lately in terms of, as Charlie mentioned, they've tightened up a lot defensively. You would spin their strengths on their attacking output, but they've gone from 1.7 goals per game now to just 0.6, and that is making a huge difference, and probably also means that you're seeing the benefits of those attacking returns a bit more, that you don't need to be scoring 2-3 goals every game if the attackers just have to score 1 or 2 to, cancel out whatever goes on defensively. And again, Eden and Sam Hughes, as you mentioned, again, both been really important for them, and a bit of experience again, just showing why sometimes you need that to blend with the young core that Peterborough like to have, just to settle things down a little bit. So yeah, really important for Peterborough that they've tightened up at the back, and then Poku coming back now as well. You can't really ask for much more as a Peterborough fan at the moment.
Yeah, Charlie, how important is Kwame Poku for Peterborough United?
Oh, massively. I mean, we've missed him so much. The goals have sort of dried up since his injury. I mean, you understand why. I'm very firmly of the view, and I know with 2 Birmingham City fans on, it's not going to be a popular opinion necessarily, but I do think he is the best player in the division by a decent margin. I think he walks into any side in the league. What he was doing in a not very good team for the first half of the season was nothing short of a miracle. The way he was consistently scoring, consistently assisting, his output was so high. He is a special player, a really special player. He'll move on to bigger and better things in the summer, but he can definitely play a massive part for the next sort of 10 games. And, he's coming back in ahead of the derby at Cambridge on Saturday. And what a time to have a player of that quality back in your team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering, where it looks like Peterborough United have put themselves in a good position to secure safety with this recent form, and you've got that final as well. I mean, would winning the JPT or what's it called, Virtue Trophy now, and staying up, would that make it a passable season at London Road?
I don't think it's ever going to be passable, and it's definitely been frustrating. And I think we've had a lot of apologies from a lot of people for this season not being as good as we'd maybe expect. We were marketed a promotion season, really, and we haven't had anywhere near that. But listen, if we can put together a run of form and finish, I wouldn't want to finish 20th, but if we can keep our form on going and finish mid-table, maybe get up to sort of the 12th range, if we can do something like that, which isn't actually impossible when you look at the points and look at our fixtures. And if we obviously beat you guys at the Wembley final, then it will be an okay season. It will be a season that actually will come out of feeling not like we've had a good year, but feeling optimistic for the future.
Is that the thing that excites you? Because you have got a thriving academy at the moment. You have got a talented young squad, and it's not the same. Let's say you finish 17th this season, somewhere around there. It's not the same going from 17th to 6th with an old or peak age squad. Like if you've got a young squad, sometimes a lot of the progression can just happen organically, as opposed to needing some sort of seismic shift.
Yeah, I think a lot of lessons will have been learnt from this season, both in terms of the recruitment. It feels like we probably won't. We'll carry on with our young player strategy and we'll keep trusting young players, but we'll probably reinstall that sort of safety net of a little bit more experience. And by experience, I don't mean age, but just games in the EFL really behind them. It was always going to be tough throwing Manny Fernandez into his first season, James Donnelly into his first season, players like this. Giving them game time when they've not really had consistent game time before. And obviously injuries haven't helped with that either. but there's definitely a lot of room within this squad if we do stay up and if we move on to next season and we have a good summer transfer window to be really good. And I think, you know, the offers we've had for players, Harley Mills was subject to interest from QPR, James Dornelli from Fulham. You know, Manny Fernandez was going to go to Norwich until that collapsed at the last moment. So they're players that are obviously viewed to have quite a lot of caliber, and we just need to get them performing on a consistent basis. And if we can do that next season, you never know what will happen.
Yeah, and I'm wondering as well, Charlie, what do you think is going to happen in terms of the status of some of those players, in terms of whether they stay at Peterborough or not? Because you've got Kwame Poku, who I imagine is going to have a lot of interest. You've got Malik Mothersill, who might get some interest. There's Ricky J. Jones, who we speak to Tim Steedley on the pod sometimes, and we have a bit of banter about Ricky J. Jones because I'm a massive advocate of his, and Tim's a bit more on the fence, shall we say. But so I think there's lots of players there that maybe clubs higher up the pyramid could be interested in. I'm wondering how many of those you think will be staying at London Road and how many you think might be leaving.
I mean, I think Ricky J. Jones, Kwame Poku, Hector Cipriano are all confirmed to be leaving. They're all out of contract, so we actually cannot keep them. We've offered them all good new contracts, quite sizable new contracts. They've rejected them all, so they'll be gone. And they've all been good servants to the football club, and they've all got a lot of upside, and they'll all move higher up the pyramid, I'm sure. In terms of the other players you mentioned, Malik Mothersill, I think he'll stay. He seems to be relatively invested in Posh. He's got a house near the city of Peterborough. He's moved his entire family up there. He doesn't seem that, you know, like he's going to leave anytime soon. He seems committed to becoming a real talisman in League One and not moving too early and biding his time out. And the thing with Malik Mothersill is, I think he's probably... I have been quite critical of Malik Mothersill because we hold him to a very high standard as Peterborough fans. But in terms of neutrals, I think he's quite underrated. I don't think he's treated as sort of the player that he could be. And it wouldn't surprise me if next season he goes and scores the golden boot and, you know, ends up getting a massive move. You know, we've seen posh strikers do that so many times throughout the recent years. So I think, listen, Poku's going to leave, Ricky's going to leave, Hector Cipriano's going to leave. But other than that, we'll try and keep as many of the young players as possible. But also, we've realised that we still haven't really replaced Mason Clark. We still haven't really replaced Ronnie Edwards or Josh Knight. So I think this summer, in terms of expenditure and in terms of the volume of players we're bringing in and the moves we're making in the transfer market, could be one of our biggest for a very long time.
James, would you have Poku at St Andrews? Because he would be quite a nice fit for the way we play, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. I think he's a special player, as Charlie mentioned. I'm not sure, I wouldn't pitch him as the best player in the league, but that's a bit of bias from my side coming in. But he's definitely in the bracket conversations up there. He's a really talented player. I'm pretty sure his case will go to tribunal if he does leave because of his age. So I think Peterborough will still get some money from his sale, probably less than they would have got if they'd had the contract situation a bit better. But with the bids they turned down reportedly last summer, that probably helps their case and probably get a few million maybe for Poku leaving. And I think what Charlie touched on there in terms of with Mothersill and Peterborough's reputation generally over the last few years, that maybe this season will be a bit of a lesson in terms of one, bringing in a bit more experience to help the young players bed in a little bit better. And also, I still think that players are going to trust Peterborough in terms of they know that they can come and play good football there and probably finish towards the top end of League One. But if they do well at Peterborough and the price is right, they will be allowed to leave. So I think players that are like Mothersill will probably more likely to still stick at Peterborough, go there for a season, try and improve as a player before probably taking that leap a little bit when it's a bit more on the fence, a bit premature for them. So I think that probably helps their case, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them next season competing right towards the top of the league again.
So Charlie, I mean, the way you're talking this evening, you sound quite hopeful. I would say that the Peterborough are going to climb the table in the last 10 games and finish in that kind of lower mid-table bracket and I mean, I think you mentioned top half, so you're not really fearing the drop, despite what the table would suggest.
I'm going to be honest with you. I never really have. I've
Right.
seen, what we've done to some of the teams around us at the bottom of the league, and I know we've not had the best results, but we thumped Cambridge 6-1, and so we know that the teams below us weren't better than us, and we also knew that on our day, we have potential to beat teams. We've not beat Huddersfield and Shrewsbury and the games we've won, and Wrexham in the Virtue away. We've not beat them because they've had off days. We've beat them because we've been better than them on the day, and of course, them not performing at their best has helped, but we have also been very good. Listen, I think we are probably 3 or 4 wins away. We've got a relatively favourable run of games. We've got, Cambridge this Saturday away. We've still got to play Crawley away. And we've got quite a lot of home games as well between now and the end of the season. So I see us being absolutely fine. I've never really been worried about it because I've always felt like we've got the squad to pull it out the bag when it was necessary. And I could see where the wins were going to come from. And I just hope that, first of all, I hope that Cambridge go down and maybe Cobblers as well, because, you love to see it. And second of all, I hope that, we can finish it as strongly as possible and just get the fans enjoying watching the team play again, get back to playing the Peterborough United way, which will help us recruit players in the summer and then get ready and go for next season.
Brilliant stuff, Charlie, and keep up the work on good work on off the up the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie.
No worries. We had a video message from Ed Walker. Here's what he had to say on Burton Albion.
March, and it's the middle of March, and I'm unfortunately a percentage of the way to having to already write off the relegation battle as done in League One. The relegation zone has had the same teams in it since December. I really wanted to believe that we had a twist coming before the end of this campaign, and that at least one of that bottom four could break out of it at the expense of someone else. We did have a period with teams on the cusp of exiting the bottom four, but now, bad couple of weeks results-wise for those down there. There's a gap to safety that's built back up again, currently 6 points, and it's hard to believe that anyone in here is actually going to claw it back in such a short period of time. I do think that the teams in there, Burton Albion are the most capable of pulling it off. 2025 it's been a success in some ways for them. Gary Bowyer inherited a seemingly dead and buried group. He's rejuvenated them somewhat, stamped his authority on certainly the squad personnel. He's delivered the least that we at fans could ask for, a very respectable mid-table record since he took over. This relegation, should it happen, it's not going to be on him. It's going to be as a result of a summer of just far too many recruitment gambles, risked, people new to the division. 8 points from the first 16 games. That's the season killer right there. We have thankfully had more to enjoy in the second half of this season, in part by having a first choice 11 that I think we like as a collective. When everyone's around, you're looking at a team of Max Crocombe in goal, a back three of Jack Armour, Ryan Sweeney and Terence Van Kooten, Owen Dodgson and Adoka Godwin Malithe at wing back, midfield three of JJ McKinnon, Keg Schalk and Charlie Webster, and a front two of Jon Daddy Budvarsson and Roman Burrell. If you could guarantee me that all of that 11 can start all of these last 10 games, I think we could give it a go for survival. That team has shown that it can take the game to plenty of sides in this division. The biggest problem, though, Burton have got the hardest fixture schedule of anyone else in the bottom half. They've still got 6 of the current top 9 to play. 3 of those at home, 3 of those away. We can't sit here and say for sure how many points you're going to need for survival. That projection number changes week on week, of course, but if you talk about aspiring for that kind of magic 50 that people talk about, for instance, it's the equivalent of needing 6 more wins. You can't rely on just Shrewsbury Town away, Wigan Athletic at home, Exeter City away and Cambridge United at home to deliver those. They're going to have to record some scalps. There's such an exceptional standard to hit now for Burton because the first half of the season was so bad. And the worry is that if you look back at their 2 most recent games, playing away to Wycombe Wanderers and at home to Bolton Wanderers, it's demonstrated that there is a definite gulf in quality between the top end and the bottom end of the division, and Burton have still got to experience that for nearly 2/3 of their remaining games. Truthfully, my hope now is that we can try and delay what feels a bit of an inevitable outcome for as long as they can. If they could find themselves going down to Charlton Athletic on the final day with something to play for, that is truthfully something of an achievement in itself. April is a horror month of fixtures for us. It was always going to be. As many wins and as many draws as you can now. That's, I guess, all we ask for from these final 10.
Ed Walker there, bringing his excellent insight on Burton Albion, as well as being a League One expert, of course. James, just wanted to ask you about this fixture list that Burton Albion have, because it's very easy to say Burton have the best chance of the four, given the points difference, which is pretty significant at this stage. However, as Ed mentioned quite rightly, and I can read out the fixtures now, after Shrewsbury away this Saturday and Wigan at home, they've got to get back-to-back points from the back-to-back wins from those games, because after that they've got Stockport away, they've got Leyton Orient at home, they've got Wrexham away, they've got Huddersfield at home, Exeter away, and then Birmingham at home before hosting Cambridge on the penultimate weekend, and then going to Charlton. So it's an absolute killer run-in, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that the teams that you mentioned there's such quality between the majority of them. And like Ed said, they've got to realistically win the 4 games against Exeter, Wigan, Shrewsbury and Cambridge. And that's the bare minimum. And that doesn't even guarantee you anything, really. So you need in 12 points from those 4, 6, 15, 12. Yes, my maths is right. 12
right
points from those 4. Second guessing myself. Yeah, 12 points from those 4 before you're even thinking about any of the teams above them. The only thing that I would say is going for them is potentially Huddersfield and Leyton Orient, whilst their standing is quite good, that maybe they are dropping off a little bit. So potentially it's not as difficult in those games as it looks on paper. But again, there's still quality in those sides, isn't there? So yeah, really difficult for them. The only thing as well that I think probably goes against them is their home record is pretty terrible. It's the worst in the division. And I feel like when it comes to these crunch games, St Andrews in the Championship relegation battle over the last few seasons, that you really need those extra percentages in games, and home crowds and a home record really can give you that. And I just don't know whether they'll have enough at the Pirelli to, get them over the line in those games, which really matters at this stage of the season.
Absolutely. Well, one of the teams hoping Burton Albion don't get results in such tough games is Mansfield Town. So we're joined now by Stag Sarah. Thanks so much for joining us, Sarah. Really appreciate your time. Are you surprised that Mansfield Town are embroiled in a relegation conversation? Maybe not battle just yet, but conversation, given the sheer volume of points that you accumulated in the first half of the season?
I would say, yeah, I was really shocked from the start of the season how well we're actually playing. It was very overwhelming to get such good results at the start, but then to suddenly start losing every game. It was really, really confusing for us as fans to see how a team that could be beating teams at the top like Barnsley turns into not being able to beat teams that are in the relegation fight. It was quite difficult to come to terms with, really.
I mean, is there anything that you feel kind of prompted this kind of downturn in results and possibly performances? Or no, although I know there were games like Wigan at home where you absolutely battered them and probably should have won that one and ended up drawing 0-0.
Yeah, I think a lot of injuries have happened, but they happen for every team, I would say. Losing Lee Gregory has been the issue. He's been the main scorer for us all season, and Will Evans sort of needs him to get goals. He is a good player without him, but they work so good together. And I feel that him mainly, and a lot of injuries to defenders, has prompted no real goal threat and letting in a lot of chances that we wouldn't have done previously.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It does feel like Mansfield Town have had a lot of injuries in the last few years. Maybe I know lots of teams have injuries, it seems these days, but it may be especially with Mansfield Town. Do you think there's a sports science aspect for the club to look at going forward?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I can't remember who it was, but some part of the management has expressed that they think there's issues with the training ground.
Right.
And that's proving some sort of injury. But it's happened for quite a few years now. I remember maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago, we had the goalkeeping coach have to register as a player again to be on the bench. And yeah, there's just a lot of issues with injuries that I don't think happened for other teams as severe as Mansfield recently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm wondering, Nigel Clough, I believe his contract is up in the summer. If this season sort of finishes that, perhaps he stay up, but not with a great second half of the season, is there a possibility that the club are going to say to Nigel, look, thanks so much for your service to the club. You've done loads for us. We're really grateful for it. But actually, for us to continue to stabilise and move upwards within League One, we're going to move into go in a different direction.
I'm not sure because obviously he's brought a lot to the club in terms of getting Mansfield out of League Two, but definitely the dip in form, you can't not question that at all. I can see him maybe retiring at the end of the season if he doesn't get a new contract offer. With managers like Darryl Clark becoming available, it's looking very likely that Clough might leave at the end of the season or be pushed by the owners. I'm not too sure, but personally, I would be really sad to see him go after everything he's done for the club.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly been a very successful reign for Nigel Clough, given the difficulties the club had in sort of meeting expectations and living up to its billing in League Two previously. So every credit to him for that. Sarah, do you think you're going to stay up?
I really hope so. Part of me doesn't want to think about the relegation battle because of how upsetting that really would be. I think Mansfield's start to the season will be just good enough to keep them in, although many of us fans can't see where the next point's going to come from.
Really?
And because we haven't won since the 4th of January, I think, and some of the fixtures coming up, it's really, really frustrating just to see. Like, we have Barnsley on Saturday, who've just sacked their manager, returning player Keeler Dunn. We're really worried about stuff like that. So I could see us staying up. It'd be very hard to see us go down with the amount of points that the teams in the bottom 4 have. I can only see Burton getting out of that, which I really hope they don't. But yeah, I don't want to think that they go down.
Well, that's a good enough answer for us. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us, and all best. Fingers crossed for the rest of the season.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers. So our next sort of video contribution is from Charles Commins from Cobblers to Meet. Here's what he had to say earlier today.
Hi Gab, sorry I can't be on with you live tonight, but you've asked me for what I think of the Cobblers, I suppose, chances over the next few games. There's 10 games left now, so you've titled this Relegation Dogfight. Well, I don't believe that we're in a dogfight as such. I know that the position in the table, 19th, looks precarious, but look at how far away we are in terms of points. Burton are probably the only team, I think, that can probably get out of it now. And while I completely see your point of if we lose on Saturday to your Blues and Burton pick up a win, then the gap is down to, 5 points again. But I think we've got more than enough, really, to see us through to the end of this season. I think the supercomputer predicted us to finish 18th at last look, so I'd be happy with that. Plenty of games still to be played, plenty of games left for all of the bottom 4 to have to play each other. Bottom 6 have to play each other as well, I think. So, yeah, lots to still go on, but I think the Cobblers will be absolutely fine. Starting with taking some points off of your Birmingham City lot on Saturday. Cheers, Gab. See you later. Bye.
There you go. Fighting talk there from Char. It's almost like Kevin Keegan in 1996, wasn't it? Um, I do you know what? I think Northampton might be able to get a 0-0 draw off us or something like that on Saturday. I know, like, we've had an unbelievable season. Don't get me wrong, and we're coasting to the title now. But I think Northampton Town's best strength, and they've demonstrated it consistently over the last 4 years since John Brady took charge, and I think it's something Kevin Nolan has done really well since taking the reins from him. Their out of possession work, I think, is really, really strong, and I think the fact that we have 6-7% possession on average in our games, I think that's actually going to play into Northampton's main strength, obviously with the caveat that it's up against a different level of quality to what they're used to facing. But I think with the organisation that we've seen from Northampton, I think they keep a clean sheet once every 3 games. Really solid outfit. They've got a really talented defender in Max Dyche, Sean Dyche's son. They've got versatile players who are able to slot in and adapt to different circumstances. Another culture that, another sort of quality that John Brady sort of instigated. I've got a feeling that Northampton might be able to pinch a result off us somehow, but bit of an outside shout that, but I think they might do it.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, their out of possession work has been really impressive. I think I worked it out earlier. Something like, I think 2.7 average shots on target against in the box. It's just crazy for a team that's that far down. Impressed by their out of possession work. I think that's going to be really key for them if they're going to maintain staying up. And they're competitive in most of the games that they play. And then when you look towards the top end of the pitch, I know we won't be able to play on Saturday, but Tyler Roberts, obviously, very mitigating circumstances over why he's at this level. But in terms of quality, there's definitely a player that's shouldn't really be in a League One relegation battle. Cameron McGeehan, again, injuries probably hindered him in his career. But yeah, another player that probably has quality beyond the positioning that Northampton find themselves in. Tariq Fosu is, again, another player that's got quality in his boots. So if they can retain that solidity that they've shown at the back and then get the ball towards those players, towards the top end of the pitch, then they've definitely got a fighting chance. And they have goals from everywhere as well. I think it's 8 different scorers over the last 8 games. So very pleased with what I've seen from Kevin Nolan so far, especially given there were a lot of question marks over his appointment, given he's been out of the game for quite a while. So yeah, impressed by Northampton lately. And like you said, the out possession work is, definitely a big plus for them.
Yeah, it was interesting actually with Kevin Nolan because he last managed Leyton Orient initially in the sort of mid-2010s, whereas when they had Francisco Bacchetti as owner and all the issues with that, and then they had, and then he was at Notts County where he kept them up, after taking over midway through his first season, got them into the playoffs, and then there was I think first 4 games of last season he lost all of them, and that was the season they ended up getting relegated. And then since then, he's only done coaching work. So he was worked with David Moyes at West Ham. And it's always a difficult one for me because unlike somebody like Inigo Calderon, who's gone in at Bristol Rovers with a really strong you speak to anyone at Brighton, they say he's got an incredible, reputation as a coach there. I don't know whether, you feel quite the same with Kevin Nolan, just because how much of it was his playing reputation at West Ham and how much of it was his sort of contacts and connections as opposed to how good he is as a coach. But no, I've been really impressed by him so far.
Yeah, I think it also partly hinders him that in terms of the English factor there, in terms of you hear a young coach from an academy, someone like Calderon, a bit continental maybe, and probably makes it a bit more exciting for fans than someone like Nolan. When they come in, you think, people remember him, like you say, for his playing style, and he's a bit more of a known character in the game. But I do really respect the fact that he had to go to number 1, probably felt that it was a little premature for him, and then went back in as on a coaching staff, and shows good humility, I think, to be able to take a step back and know that there's more for you to learn before you take that next step step into another number one job. So I'd say that's quite impressive. Even like you say, with his West Ham connections, to spend that long, learning off someone like David Moyes and then be able to take those lessons into the environment that he's got in Northampton at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Back-to-back wins for Bristol Rovers and Exeter City. So they've given themselves some much-needed breathing room. I mean, what about Exeter City continuing to stabilise themselves in League One? Because they're set to secure a fourth consecutive season at that level. And for a fan-owned club to be able to do that, it speaks to a club that uses its resources so well and has a really good structure and setup behind the scenes in order to be able to sustain results at this level without loads of external investment.
Yeah, absolutely incredible for them if they manage to do it, secure a fourth consecutive survival, especially like you mentioned with the finances involved. I think that's one factor I've definitely noticed this season being in League One is that the parity between the sides at the top and the side at the bottom in terms of financials is definitely becoming a bigger thing. But Exeter definitely, as a fan-owned club, it's really impressive for them. I'm not sure where the fans will stand on Gary Caldwell at the minute. I think there was obviously a lot of pressure on him coming in that run that they had where it saw them plummet towards the bottom of the table. But I watched the highlights of their game against Mansfield the other day, and they looked like, as much as Mansfield didn't mount much of a challenge, that Exeter were back to their best a little bit with quite a lot of attacking scenarios generated and a decent bit going forward, and then obviously a bit of solidity in the last two wins that they've shown as well. So yeah, really, really impressive for Exeter, like you mentioned, with the lack of huge sums of money that's being put in there to still be solidifying themselves. So yeah, brilliant stuff from them. And I do like a lot of their squad. I think there's really nice versatility and quality in there. Dimitri Mitchell, one of my favourites as well.
Yeah, Mitchell's a very good attacking wing-back, although he's been used in a more advanced role recently. But I think the big one for me were Josh McGuinness, because they didn't really have an out-and-out centre-forward for much of last season, and they managed to, by hook or by crook, get results without one. I think, although they did bring in Mo Issa in January. But I think it shows with McGuinness. McGuinness is definitely the kind of forward who can play well without scoring, and he brings a real strength and work ethic to the team, and it seems like that consistency can be really valuable to a team that's likely to be one of the weaker sides in the league in terms of, on paper, if you've got a focal point who can bring everyone together.
Yeah, I think those kind of strikers, which, like you say, don't have to score to play well, they can bring others into play, and they're going to work their socks off whether they're in the game or not, are really valuable the further down the league that you go. And I think he just shows how good their recruitment has been. A player like him, someone like Ryan Woods as well, those kind of players which other clubs might not be looking at them. They're a bit less desirable in terms of the clubs with a bit more money to spend, but there is real value in them if you can bring them into a team that suits them. And with the energy that they've got in and around those two, neither of them known for their mobility, especially. The energy they've got around them has really benefited them, and they've both been impressive points when I've seen them this season.
Yeah, I think the other thing is they've used the loan market really well. So, somebody like Joe Whitworth on loan from Crystal Palace, Ryan Trevitt from Brentford. They seem to be able to have really good, I think Gary Caldwell has really good contacts because he's worked at various different Premier League clubs. So he's got lots of good contacts in the game, which I think has helped Exeter get a higher kind of caliber of player than they might otherwise have. But I think it's... I wanted to speak about Bristol Rovers as well. Back-to-back wins for them, beating Huddersfield Town 1-0, which prompted the parting of company with Michael Duff, and then Bolton Wanderers 3-2. Again, when I saw them at Northampton, they impressed me as an in-possession outfit. Even though they weren't particularly strong out of possession, I think they've toughened up in that regard in the last few games. But they, I did feel like... in flashes, you can see how good they can be in possession. And somebody like Isaac Hutchinson, I don't know if you've been able to catch much of him, James, but, he's had his first season up in League One now after a really big numbers season at Walsall. Do you think he's somebody we should be keeping an eye on for next season?
I've seen bits and pieces of Hutchinson, and yeah, impressive when he has played. And I know he's chipped in with a few goals, probably not as many, like you say, as he managed last season, but still for the step up that he's had, still an impressive campaign. But I think not just him specifically, but in terms of Calderon, he's bringing more out of the attacking unit as a whole. I do think there's quality there, like you mentioned, Hutchinson. I think Omachere and Satiriu are both decent forward options. Then obviously you got Chris Martin, who's ever reliable, still going, isn't he? Kofi Shaw, young lad who's impressed me in that Bolton game, and still think Shaq Ford has got so much to offer them as well.
Yeah, I like
but yeah, they're definitely getting a lot more out of them. What really impressed me particularly though with Bristol Rovers was their highlight. I watched the highlights back for their game against Bolton, and the harrying that they showed before they got the free kick that led to the winner. I think they've got real fight in there in that squad, as well as the as the quality that we've mentioned. But yeah, I really like the togetherness that they've shown. Like you said, toughened up a little bit, but all of them were so relentless in that game, and it really shows. Even though they're pegged back twice to come through and get the 3 points, so 2 massive wins for them. Really like what I've seen from Calderon and from Bristol Rovers lately.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited now to see what Calderon can do with a full pre-season with his players, because I always feel, I felt like this was the awkward bit where, if you can get through with a bit of grit and a bit of resilience and do what you need to do just to secure your divisional safety, I'm pretty confident that Calderon can do some good stuff with his squad and oversee some real progress next season over a full pre-season and a summer to recruit. I imagine, because they signed a lot of players in the summer just gone, so they're probably mainly 2-year contracts. So I think he is going to have to work with the squad that he has mainly. But the fact that it's a full pre-season to get his ideas across in a longer format, I think that's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think obviously he's got a great reputation as a coach, and that's always really positive for fans. You think they can improve players, but you kind of have to come in when you're coming in mid-season and show a bit more of the managerial side before you can get to the coaching, which, as you say, comes in that pre-season. So it's impressive that he's got the results without having loads of time on the pitch, especially with the schedule in League One, how relentless it is. So yeah, hopefully he can get back to a bit more of his bread and butter with the coaching in the summer, and then maybe we'll see an even better level from Bristol Rovers.
Oh, my mistake. 12 players out of contract in the summer. I actually thought that because they brought in, feels like 20 odd players they signed in the summer just gone. So I presumed I presumed that they'd all be under contract for next season because they'd have signed 2 and 3 year deals. But according to Ben Darrell, there's 12 players out of contract, which has caught me out a little bit. So I need to brush up on my research next time. Well, delighted to be joined now by Sam Jordan, Crawley Town fan from Reds Bar Chat. Sam, thanks so much for joining us to bring your insight on the Red Devils. How are you feeling about your... it's a bit of a long shot, isn't it, in terms of staying up?
Yeah, look, I mean, we need 7 wins, I'd say, from the last 10, and we've won 7 all season. So, yeah, long shot's a good word, Gab. We've actually only won 5 of the last 34 games as well. So, yeah, and in the last 10, we've got Huddersfield and Birmingham away. So, yeah, easy fixtures, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Who are the players, Sam, that you feel like because I do think that although there's been maybe a defensive fragility about Crawley Town this season, there have been passages of play where you've looked like a good footballing side. Obviously difficult to sustain that without a certain quality of player at this level. But are there some players there that like Barker and like Anderson perhaps that you think, we can move forward with these lads?
Yeah, I think we've underestimated how physical the league is, how quick the league is, and we haven't been good enough. But you're right, there's been some shining lights. I was going to call him Richie Barker then. Richie Barker's son, Charlie Barker, obviously playing for National League Wealdstone last season, has kind of come in 21 years old, been skipper the last 2 games, and yeah, he's done fantastic. And it'll be interesting to see if we can keep hold of him, whether someone from higher up or even in League One wants to keep him for next season. And then Harry Forster's done really well. Fortunately been out injured the last few games, but since January he's been done really well as a wing back, and again was playing for Bromley a couple of years ago in the National League. And then other standouts, probably Max Anderson has done well, coming and settled into the team well. Jeremy Kelly signed Liam Fraser in January. Kamari Doyle's come on loan from Brighton since January, and he's come in and impressed. But we just haven't scored enough goals. I think our top goal scorer's got 7 or 8 goals. So haven't
Yeah,
got
it's Will
enough
Swan,
goals.
isn't it? Top goal scorer with that 7.
Yeah, I think Will and Todas Romney, who we signed from America as well. I think they're combined, if I'm right. But yeah, just haven't scored enough goals. And then obviously we've got probably the leakiest defence in the EFL. But we've tried to play some good football. I think we've just come up against a much better size this season compared to last season.
James, from your point of view, we obviously played Crawley a couple of days before Christmas, didn't we? At their place. I'm wondering, what did you make of the Red Devils that day? And what did you make of them?
On that day, I don't think it was the prettiest game for either side, even though it was first and second in terms of possession in the league going up against each other. I don't think it was, one for the neutral to look on with the eye. I think the pitch played into it, and the conditions generally, I think, weren't the greatest on the day. But in terms of Crawley throughout the season, I have been impressed, like you say, in terms of the passages that they've looked to play at times. Potentially needed a bit more initiative with the possession, but still not bad considering, like you say, the quality is probably lacking a little bit throughout the squad. But it puts them in good stead if they go down, which probably looks like they will, to come back up and look to reset themselves with a young squad. Sam mentioned it there in terms of underestimating the physicality, and I do think that's been a bit of an issue, definitely defensively. Been a bit soft in terms of the goals that they've conceded and being able to be counters quite quickly in a lot of transitional moments where Crawley have looked to step a bit higher up the pitch and then probably been caught out defensively a little bit too much, but definitely put them in good stead to come back up. I think it's still a positive season in terms of the position you're going to find yourself going back into League Two. And when you consider how many players left and Scott Lindsay leaving as well, to come out of it with Rob Elliott still being in a decent position and probably keeping his job into League Two next season, you can't really ask for too much more, I'd say, in terms of if you're going to go down, where you'd like to be placed.
Yeah, Sam, with that in mind, if the worst does happen, are we looking at an extensive rebuild for Crawley? Because I think you had quite a surprisingly high turnover of players last summer, and the way contracts tend to work is that it seems to be one summer where there's a high turnover and one summer where it's a bit quieter. Are we looking at a summer where it might be slightly quieter, or how's it shaping up, do you think?
I think every summer at Crawley is typically normally high turnover, if I'm honest with you.
Right.
I think there'll be a few players from kind of the first season at Wagme here with contracts expiring, like Dion Conroy. So what happens with him, as an example? But there's also players who we signed this summer who should be staying. But obviously, it's really difficult at Crawley because we're punching well above our weight. If someone comes in a decent offer, we can't really turn it down. Some of the players would have signed wanting to play League One football, and if they've done well enough to get another League One club to come in from, will we stay in their way? Probably not. So it's really difficult to see what will happen next season. Jojo Wallacott, he left in January. Is he going to be in next season in goal? We've had a couple of loan collies in who've gone back to their parent clubs injured. So I don't know really. I think, if I'm honest with you, without being too negative, my biggest fear is I don't want back-to-back relegations. If you look at the likes of Yeovil, Forest Green and Carlisle potentially, that is a real threat. And obviously, if you look at Crawley the last 10 years, typically we're a bottom half League Two team. So I just hope we kind of do keep some of these players and maintain some of the standards of the season. Because if you look at our results, to be fair, we've seen a lot of goals, but we haven't been heavily beaten on that many occasions. I look at the last 2 games, we've drawn against Reading, lost 1-0 against Charlton. Do you know what I mean? We, albeit threw away a lead against Bolton, but we lost 4-3. So we have had some batterings in there as well, but not every game, not loads of games. And yeah, so there is positives, but if you're going to tell me how many of these players have been next season, no idea.
Right. Gosh, so yeah, could be a bit of another summer of change. Do you think you've seen enough from Rob Elliott to suggest he could take the club forward with the right support and guidance?
I think I mean, his job has been remarkably hard. He's come in and taken over from Scott Lindsay, done an outstanding job midway through the season, and then we haven't probably really strengthened January as he'd liked. So he hasn't had a pre-season. He's trying to play a style of football without probably a transfer window that he'd like to dictate. So I do personally think, although the last few games, or last 5 to 10 games, you can question a few things, I do think he deserves a summer. I think he gave up a really good job at Gateshead to bring himself down here with his coaching staff who all lived in the North East, and I think he does deserve a summer, if I'm honest with you. Whether he'll get that or not is a different matter. But I do think he deserves a summer, and I do feel sorry for him because he's had a tough gig.
Absolutely. Sam, thanks for your insight, and I hope you can enjoy
Thanks,
the
Sam.
rest of your life in League One.
Thanks, Gab.
Top man, Sam. Our final guest of the evening is Nathan of Salad Nathan on Twitter. Thanks so much for joining us, Nathan. Really appreciate your time as you take the chewing gum out.
Yeah.
Is it? Are you waving the white flag? I mean, Gareth Ainsworth certainly isn't, but from a fan base point of view, are you pretty much resigned to an end to your long-serving stint in League One, having been promoted to the level in 2015?
I was. And then I listened to the interview from Gareth Ainsworth, and the man has a way with words. We could be mathematically out of it, and I'd still believe we could stay up after listening to him. But honestly, it probably is over. We probably need 8 wins. Probably need to go to Birmingham and beat them. I mean, to be fair, the fixtures have been nice to us, but we've lost them anyway, which is the big issue. If we'd have beaten Exeter, maybe not got sent off 13 seconds into the game against Peterborough would have been helpful.
Well, that's the weird thing,
over,
isn't it, Nathan? Because you beat Wrexham at home and you beat us, Birmingham at home, back in November. Like, you seem to actually be able to pull a result out of the bag against the top sides.
We beat Orient 3-0 in October.
Yeah.
It was amazing, but then we can't. Then it was, I think, 2 games after the Birmingham win.
No, I thought it was
we
August,
lost 4-1
actually.
to Cambridge.
Wasn't it August that you beat Leyton Orient 3-0?
Yeah, it was early on in the season. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was under Paul Hurst.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I don't really know. There's no consistency in the team. I mean,
Yeah.
we had 2 wins in a row, the first time in like over a year, and then we can't kick a ball. I mean, we went down to 10 men against Mansfield, we're 1-0 down, beat them, and then we lose the next. I don't know. We might.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very frustrating, and especially in your position, you want to at least be, accumulating a steady flow of points so that when you get to the end of the season, Gareth Ainsworth's positivity and motivating qualities really count for something, because you're 5 points off safety, you're 6 points off safety, and you feel like you've got it within your sights, and a few wins in April and you might get yourselves. Whereas I think with 11 points, I mean, James, you've got to feel like, from Shrewsbury's point of view, it feels like a near impossible task.
Yeah, it feels like slightly too much. I think if they're going to start anywhere, it's got to be a win over Burton this weekend. But yeah, it just feels like a little bit too much to do. I think the points that tally at the start of the season really did hinder him. I think Ed spoke about it with Burton earlier, but when Ainsworth come in, there was just such little points on the boards that it was always going to be an uphill task, and he kind of rejuvenated the squad a little bit, but it's caught up with him in the end. It'll be interesting, though, potentially going into next season, should Shrewsbury go down, how it works with Ainsworth, because I think we've seen 2 different examples with him at Wycombe and QPR in terms of players responding to him and how much they buy into his ideology. If there's a relegation, how much do the Shrewsbury players then still buy into the ideas that Ainsworth can put across to them will be interesting. But if they do buy in, there's still, as I mentioned with Crawley, I still think there's a strong position for Shrewsbury in terms of, should they go down, to be able to mount the challenge to come back up with a manager like Gareth Ainsworth in charge.
Nathan, the one thing that Shrewsbury have, in their favour, obviously Ainsworth is and his ability to bring people together, and I do think that counts for a lot at this stage of the season. The home fixtures look reasonably kind. You've got Burton Albion at home on Saturday, which you've absolutely got to win. No, no two ways about it. You've got Cambridge United at home. You've got Reading at home. In terms of the home games, these are. You've got Wigan, and on the final day, it's Crawley, who could already be relegated at that point. So if you can go into the final day needing to win, you'll probably beat Crawley, because I would expect them to already be down by that point. But it's whether you can get something away from home, because let's say you can, you've got to try and get 15 points from those 5 home games. Then even that leaves you with Birmingham away, Wickham away, Lincoln away, Northampton away, and Barnsley away, and try and get something from those games. But it's it's a mammoth ask, isn't it?
It's well, Wickham away and Birmingham away. You can throw them off. All right, Birmingham beating them. It's the new manager bouncing to amazing game, but we're not going to be able to recreate that in another 100 games. So
unless Gareth Ainsworth has a similar game to when QPR won 1-0 at Burnley in April 2023, where they, I think their central midfielder didn't even have a pass that get Tim Irish Boonham. They didn't even have a pass, and they were literally peppered all game. And for some reason, they just nicked a goal and won 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that. I mean, you never know, but I don't sit with our home form. I don't see it happening, but that's the kind of thing that you're going to need.
Yeah, I mean, Wickham, we lost 4-1 to them at home. They are fair play. They've got a couple of our players and they're smashing it. I don't think we'll beat them. And then to stay up, I think we've got to win the other 8 games. Reading, I think we've got a draw at their place, but that was while we had a Taylor Perry purple patch for a couple of games. Then he got injured, and he hasn't been the same since then. The win against Birmingham was all down to Tom Bloxham, to be honest. A lot of that. Sold him in January. There's no pace up front. We've got a 33-year-old John Marquis. I mean,
George Lloyd I quite like, actually. I think he's got a great work ethic.
He's really good, but technically when it comes to shooting, slightly lacks it, bless him. But no,
what you want with George Lloyd is other players in the team who can score goals, so he can sort of facilitate people, because he's got a great spring on him and he's got a fabulous work ethic.
Yeah, but I mean, John Marquis either scores or has an awful game. There's no in between. He's and there's no really creative midfielders behind them. We did have Leo Castledine and Tommy O'Reilly. Tommy O'Reilly went back after a apparent fallout with Paul Hurst and didn't really get on with Ainsworth. Leo Castledine is injured due to being overplayed, as Ainsworth says. It's like an injury due to that. And apart from that, there's no creativity, nothing going forward. I don't know when we'll next score, really.
Right. Well, bring up the Great Escape theme tune. Nathan, thanks so much for joining us. And it looks like a really big ask for Shrewsbury to beat the drop. We wish you luck, but you're obviously going to be up against it.
Yeah, cheers, Nathan.
Yeah. All right.
Top man, mate.
Yeah.
So, James, just to round off, I'm listening to, I think we've spoken to a fan of all the teams in the relegation stage, other than Cambridge. Freddie Owers can't quite make it. He had a late change of circumstances, but there's nothing really there that's made me think someone's going to put a run together. It does look like it's going to be the 4 in there at the moment.
Yeah, it's probably not what you want to see as a neutral. You want it to be a bit more, exciting, and you want a bit of jeopardy there. But I think Mansfield will probably be the closest in terms of the teams falling. But I don't know if Burton will have enough to piece it together. The only thing that does worry me a little bit is all of these fans of these teams keep saying, "Oh, we've got Birmingham left," and you just think there's got to be one. There's got to be one which spring. It's never as straightforward as who's got who on paper. There's always going to be one or two surprises in this last 10 games where a team will pull a rabbit out of a hat and beat one of the bigger sides. And you just think, say, for example, Burton, if they could do that once or twice, take a Blues scalp or, one of the other bigger teams they've got left to play, then maybe that points gap looks a little bit shorter.
Yeah, but do you know what's significant as well, James? It's not just the points gap to 20th in a way, because we're speaking to Charlie at the top of the show, and he's very confident that Peterborough are going to climb the table. He says he's not feared relegation all season. I mean, I'm not sure whether he's a football fan or a robot if he's not feared relegation all season, but it seems like Mansfield are actually more realistically catchable for anyone in the bottom four than Peterborough. And if it's Mansfield you're catching, for Burton the gap's not 6 points, it's 8 points. For Crawley the gap's not 9 points, it's 11. For Cambridge it's not 10 points, it's 12. For Shrewsbury it's not 11 points, it's 13. So if you're looking at teams that you're realistically going to catch, Mansfield are probably the one based on the way their form's trending. But yet for them, still, the gap's absolutely enormous.
Yeah, exactly. I think even if you look at Peterborough now, I've still got that game in hand as well. And like Charlie mentioned, he's not that fearful. So I do think it will be more likely you're going to need that 8 point gap to be bridged. But I think what really it does show is that the sides that they've been there in the bottom four for the most part of the season. You look at Crawley, theirs is probably just that they've fallen short. They've had really difficult circumstances with the amount of departures. But then you look at Cambridge, Shrewsbury and Burton, and it does just show how important that first period of the season where people say, oh, there's loads of games still to play, but that first 10, 15 games is really important, because even if you're not playing brilliantly, if you're picking up points, you're staying within touching distance, then potentially gives you a platform later in the season to build on something. But Gareth Ainsworth and Gary Bowyer have both come in, done very good jobs respectively in terms of what they've had to work with, but the points gap has just proven a little bit too much for them. So maybe that'll make a few owners second guess their manager, that maybe at the start of the season you might have given them the benefit of the doubt a little bit more. But if you're not too sure, maybe they'll make a change in the summer, in the coming seasons, just because those first few games really are as important as any other games in the season.
Absolutely. James, been great to get you on as co-host. Thanks so much for your insight on League One, especially at late notice. Thanks to all our guests this evening. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate. Join us again for another League One podcast next week. And until then, get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify.